Hey, this is Ray at the Tower E-Bike Repair Shop. Today we are assembling a Radrunner. This is a great bike by Rad. We're gonna take all the foam off of it, gonna put all the accessories that came in the accessory box that we just unpacked, and I'm gonna just get right into it. First we gotta cut off all the zip ties, quite a few. Whenever I'm cutting zip ties, I always like to kind of make them reusable. These are nice, big, heavy-duty zip ties, so I try and cut them right next to the head so I could save them for later or other assembly processes. Quite a bit of zip ties on this bike. All right, so Rad has put the front portion of the stem, zip tied it to the handlebars, and then the bolts they included in the package in the accessory box. So I'd say probably the first thing you'd want to do when you're unpacking your Radrunner, once you get it all unpackaged with all this foam and zip ties they put all over it, is install the handlebars. Use this and the 4 bolts they sent. Getting this started is always a little tricky. I really care to use a park tool versus a cheap tool kit. Make my job a little easier. If you could ever have somebody help assist you with this job, hold the handlebars while you put this faceplate on it. It makes it a lot easier as well. That snug down. We'll check the manual for torque specs later. Continue to remove packaging. Now I noticed they have this little bit zip tied and held in there with a quick release. This actually broke in shipping, it's the fork plate that all the little plastic bits in the bottom of the box were left over from. This used to be a big square plate here, and now it's just a broken bit of plastic. I don't think that's a huge deal, because this is really just meant to maintain the integrity of the fork in shipping, and it looked like it did its job, even though it got damaged in the process. Looks like they intend you to use this quick release for the front axle to hold the front wheel in place. You got to make sure you get your springs all in and aligned. The way these work is the spring cone should kind of taper out away from the wheel. You got one spring on either side. We'll have to read this tech note here. Just get this assembled, installed on the bike. brake comes surprisingly close to where you'd want it, which is good. Rear brake feels okay already. Get the pedals on. This one's labeled left and right, so that makes it easy. Whenever you're installing pedals, if you just rotate the cranks backwards, the pedal will thread in as long as you've got it on the right side. You got a pedal wrench here. This is, I'm assuming they might want you to do this with a 15 in their kit, but I'm going to use an actual pedal wrench. What do we got here? This says, in English, your cable, spokes, and chains will stretch after an initial break-in period of 50 to 100 miles. Bolted connections can loosen. Always have a reputable bike mechanic perform a tune-up on your bike after your initial break-in period. Regular inspections and tune-ups are very important to ensure your bike remains safe and fun to ride. Yeah, that's good information. They use a nice Kenda tires on here. These are great tires. I've used these on a lot of bikes, K-Rads. So that's awesome. Probably need to fill these to at least 20 PSI. These fat tires, they generally require lower pressure. This is looks like a 20 by 3.5, possibly a 4. Does it say on the side of the tire here? It's like it says 20 by 3.3. So yeah, these tires between 20 and 30 PSI is a good pressure range for them. Give you a nice cushy ride. Put on the light. We'll try using some of their wrenches. We got their 10 here. 10 goes there. Well, again, for my experience, a ratchet wrench is a lot easier. With this job, I can hold the light and the Allen key in place, and then I can just use a ratchet on the back. Fumbling with little tiny Allen wrenches and standard wrenches that don't ratchet just complicate the process, but it's still possible. When you're plugging these in, you gotta always look at the notches inside and look for the arrow on the outside of the plug. Make sure you get that lined up before you push it in so you don't bend the pins. Give us a set of keys here. Looks like 2 keys for the bike. These will be for the battery here. Generally speaking, the battery only locks on. Some bikes it turns the bike on and off. So again, we'll reference the manual for that. This bike features a single speed system with a cable or a chain tensioner. It does not have a derailleur, but it still has a guard here so that that chain tensioner doesn't get bent. That's going to definitely help keep the chain alignment with the single speed. Go ahead and just center up these brakes. There's really no gears to adjust, but brakes, we're going to recenter the calipers. These are Tektro mechanical disc brakes. We use the same brakes on the Tower V1. They do work well, but they do require some maintenance. Cable stretch and inner pad adjustment is a regular adjustment that you have to do on a bike with mechanical brakes. So you can hear this brake rotor drags slightly. It's aligned pretty well, so I can just back this inner pad adjustment out, but as you can hear, it's still dragging. So that means the rotor is slightly out of true. You can use a rotor truing tool to straighten that out, but that's a skill only a bicycle mechanic will have, so you might not be able to do that truing yourself. So if your brakes drag after you assemble your rad power bike, you might want to go ahead and take it to a mechanic. I'm just trying to recenter this brake caliper as best I can, see if I can tune that drag out. I do that by tightening the inner pad adjustment, loosening the caliper to the bracket bolts, squeezing the brake, which centers the caliper, and slowly snugging these bolts back up. Drag there. So that rotor is going to need to be trued. Not a big deal. Just see that often in a lot of different bikes. Go ahead and move to the back. Again, I'm going to loosen the caliper to the bracket bolts. I'm going to actuate the caliper, and I'm going to slowly snug these bolts back up, back and forth, back and forth. A little drag on the rear as well. What I find with mechanical disc brakes is a little bit of drag right out of the box isn't a huge deal, because you're going to go down the road and the brakes are going to wear in really quickly. A lot of times after your first or second ride, that drag will go away right away. In the case of this front brake, where it's just dragging in one spot, that's a little bit of a bend in the derailleur in the rotor that needs to be repaired with a rotor truing tool. Again, not a huge deal, something you see often. Snug this up nice and tight. I will check the manual for torque specs on all these bolts and check those later, but out of the box and assembled and just minor tuning, and this bike is pretty much ready to ride. So this is Ray at the Tower E-Bike Repair Shop. Check in our next video, we're going to test ride. Hey, this is Ray at the Tower E-Bike Repair Shop. We're just following up with our last video on assembly. We did go through the manual and check a couple of values that we are going to now confirm on the bike. They do give you a nice little just a torque value chart here. So we're going to go ahead and torque these to, it was 8 Newton meters on these guys and 10 Newton meters on the centers, on the clamp bolts here, which are, those are already set to. And then we did set we did confirm on the sidewall that the tire pressure is 30 PSI. We went over every other point on the bike to make sure that the torque specs were up to spec. And you do need a torque wrench to do that, a Newton meter torque wrench. I recommend this Park Tool TW 5.2, which you can get on our website or the Park website and or any other Park Tool retailer.